Welcome to Driver's Therapy. Today we have an awesome video. Here we have Tim with TJ's Garage here in Grand Junction, Colorado, and he's going to be telling us about his awesome Oldsmobile F60 from 1939, a four-door sedan. So without further ado, let's go ahead and learn about this awesome vehicle.
It came into the family in 1940, brand new, and it's been in the family all its life. It has who knows how many million miles. It drug a 32-foot trailer from Pennsylvania to Colorado with my mom's whole family, 5 kids and 2 adults and everything they owned. And they of course stopped in Aurora or Denver, Colorado. Didn't come over the mountain, thank goodness, or they might have hurt themselves. But that's where they resided for most of its life, and my father had started to restore it and never got back to it, and so it sat in a garage for many years, and that's when I got it finally and decided that not restoring it wasn't a good idea, and I wanted to make a hot rod out of it. So that's where I did.
And you did make a hot rod. And so tell me about this picture here. This is actually the picture, original picture of the car with your family, right?
With my mom's family, with my family, and it pulling the 32-foot trailer that is behind it, which is hard to believe they could do that back in those days. It was so heavy that the trailer sunk the back of the car all the way to the ground, and so they ended up putting wheels under the tongue of the trailer so that the weight wasn't on the car and it simply had to pull it.
And it made it.
And it made it.
That is awesome. Well, you know, that says something, because a lot of us buy cars, yeah, and some of us, you know, keeping a car for a decade is something to be proud of. Right. You know, this car has been kept for a long time. Yeah. And that's such a rich history. Yeah. So you had the car, and you got it back, and you know the situation with your mom. You wanted, you know, you wanted to bring it back to life, essentially.
Correct.
And did you think about going all stock, or did you? Why did you take this spin on the car?
I wanted a car that you could drive every day, even though it looks like an old car. I wanted something that was drivable and comfortable to drive, in hopes that my mom could drive it. She never got the chance to, but that was the hopes of it, and it drives and rides unbelievably well. It power steering, power brakes, automatic transmission, will have air conditioning eventually, all that kind of stuff, so anybody can drive it. And that was my idea, is to have a car that I can jump in this and go to the grocery store and enjoy it. It's fun because everybody likes to talk about it, plus it's nice to drive, whereas a 1939 Oldsmobile, they're not as fun to drive. So
I could see that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure your mom is proud of it, bringing it back to life and also putting your touch into it.
Absolutely.
So Tim, for the viewers out there, this is not just a regular 1939 Oldsmobile. There's so much that's been done to it, and actually I'm kind of jealous because of his mastery he's done to this car. It's just above what a normal person who's wrenching on cars does. So Tim, tell us what you've done to the car, but I kind of want to, I'm bad with secrets, tell us about the chassis that's in the car.
Well, of course, the body off and took a chassis out of a early 80s S10 two-wheel drive truck. And
that's common, right?
It is very common to use on the older cars and trucks because of the narrowness of them and stuff. Allows that kind of a wheelbase, and that allows those big tires to be on it and stuff without it sticking out the fenders. And so that part works pretty good.
And you did that yourself?
I did that myself. I took the frame, and it was a little bit long, so I had to shorten it, and then I also boxed it for strength, and didn't exit because it's not a race car. I wanted some flex in it so that it rode a little bit better than just a full race type suspension. which I can't tell the difference.
Now,
It's pretty stiff, so, but it still rides pretty nice. And then I used, the reason you go to an S10 chassis is the availability of aftermarket parts.
Okay.
If you're to build your own chassis, those parts are also available, but you got to go through the geometry and building that chassis. That chassis is already done, and so it makes it pretty simple. I bought a Ride Tech coil-over suspension for an S10 truck.
Okay.
And bolted it on that and used that suspension for this, and so that I can adjust it at that ride height that I wanted and everything. And
now that suspension, I mean, on this type of car, I don't know if when you were driving it originally compared to what you've done to it, it's night and day?
Night and day,
Okay.
night and day. Originally, this car had sat at probably another 4 to 6 inches higher. The suspension probably traveled quite a bit further, 3 or 4 inches further, so you had a lot of body roll and things like that. And of course, the tires were only designed to be about 6 inches wide. And stuff. And you really, even though they have big fat fenders on it, you really couldn't put big tires on it unless you stuck it out, because the frame rail literally followed that body all the way down and out the rear, really wide out, so there was not any room. And so the only way to get room is to either narrow that chassis, so you would cut that original chassis down to make that rear end fit, and then I would have cut the front end off to make a new chassis fit up there. And I was like, why? Just buy the whole chassis that's already narrower and put it underneath there. So in turn, I had to cut the floorboard out of it and make the floorboard fit that narrower chassis, and so on and so forth. But other than that, it's I thought was a lot easier way of going about the whole transition into something that you're going to drive every day.
Now, Tim, I'm following you, but I know a lot of people are out there excited just to do their own oil change, to put in their own air intake, but you went and you found a chassis, you put it on, you switched it out. I mean, that alone is just really impressive. I don't want to run away from that, because the mechanical side of me just gets like, whoa, how did somebody do that? What would you say was the hardest part between the chassis conversion? What would you say is the part that kind of made you think like, oh, this is a lot of work, or is it worth it? Where did you get stuck on the chassis part, if I might?
Right off the get-go. When you roll the chassis under it for the first time, before I ever rolled it under, spent hours with tape measures and trying to figure out where things are going to land and where things I got to remove off this body to get that chassis to fall on there in the correct locations that I wanted it to. And I didn't want to cut the body or do anything to it until I knew it would fit.
Because you can only do it once.
You only do it one time. Well, you could do it multiple times, but you make a mess out of the floorboard. You're going to be fixing that floorboard all up. So I wanted to make sure that it would fit. And a lot of the issues are with steering gears and the way you make the steering all fit into that narrow chassis too. And that becomes pretty complicated, trying to just figure out without seeing it, was this going to fit? You tape measure here, tape measure there. It's going to be close, maybe I'm going to try it. And as it was, as I got into it and got the chassis in underneath it and things cut out, the hardest part was getting the steering gear to fit right perfectly underneath that where the front fenders bubble out.
And I remember you mentioning that when I first met you. We're going to have to get some footage of that, because it is really
It's really tight under
really
there.
close,
Absolutely. There's very little clearance. The rest of it is just tin work. You just make it fit, cut the tin till the chassis fits. It's pretty simple, that part of it. But
now, since we're on the chassis, and you know, typically when you see a car, you sometimes you fall in love with the whole car, but sometimes you fall in love with certain aspects of the car. You know, it might be the body lines, it might be the way that it's designed. Just for me, something that stole my heart with your Oldsmobile was the wheel and tire combination. I mean, it's just, to me, it gives it so much character, and I love it. So I want to ask you why you went with that, and tell me a little bit about your wheel and tire combination thought process.
I'm a racer at heart. I circle track raced for a little bit myself. Enjoyed the looks of my circle track car with the same size big fat tires all the way around on it. Black wheels, no bazang, no nothing to them, and just always enjoyed that. I always thought that that was really cool. And in fact, my 1938 Olds coupe that I still have in there, when I first put it on the street, it had the same tire and wheel combination with big fat tires and stuff on it, but unfortunately it had the original chassis, so all the tire was sticking out of the fenders. Looked stupid, but it looked like a Legends race car because the tires hung way out of the fenders and stuff.
Cool.
But
now the love is in the detail. Now, I love the orange, and I thought that you probably searched and looked for it. But those are the original hubcaps, right?
Actually, not for the 39. They're for my 38.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, they're actually 1 year off, and
it kind of completes it.
It does. It just fits it all right. I have the original. I only have 3 of the 39s. Okay. I need to find one more, and then I'll probably put the 39s on it.
Oh, but I wonder how those look.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah, not much difference.
That's so cool.
So.
Okay, Tim, so tell me about this power plant. Is this what came in it?
No. One of the donor cars in this build was a 1984 Olds Delta 88. And that's where I got the seats, steering column, engine, transmission, all the electrical, part of the brake system, things like that, out of that car, and grafted it into this. So this is a 5.0 307 Olds big block, I guess. Olds only made one block, one big motor. Most people put small block Chevys in these, and I don't blame them because they fit a lot easier.
Now, what was there originally?
Originally would have been a flathead 6-cylinder.
Okay.
And
about how much horsepower did they come
maybe 100 horse.
Okay.
A little over 100 horses. And then 39, I think they were up to 110 or something, but yeah, they didn't have much horsepower.
And how about this one? How much are you rocking now?
I have no idea, really, tell you the truth.
A little quicker.
Yeah, a little more, but it's all stock. It's still really a stock 307 Oldsmobile engine. The only thing is it's no longer computer controlled. I put a regular distributor in it and a non-feedback carburetor on it, and so that way it's adjustable and runs sweet and smooth and nice, and everything works really well.
Well, I think we can't look at this without turning it on.
You gotta hear it.
You gotta hear it.
See if it'll start. I don't know.
Nice. Sounds smooth.
Nice and smooth.
And it idles really well.
Yeah, for a carbureted, it works really well.
That idles really good. Yeah. Okay, Tim, so usually when we open up the hood, we're typically accustomed to being like, all right, this is meant to be there, or this was installed by the manufacturer. But pretty much every piece, you had to solve a problem. Now, this pulley system here with the alternator and the AC compressor, tell me about the bracket. How did you manage to make all this work?
Well, luckily, the company CBF are the only company that make a serpentine belt system for an Oldsmobile. And that's who I went through, and it comes complete with alternator, power steering, AC, and the tensioner and all the pulleys that go along with it. Is the only way you can get an Oldsmobile engine to fit in here, because the original bracketry was way outside of the engine. So this, I had to narrow it up, and their system worked perfect for that.
I mean, it looks compact, but it looks great.
Yeah.
Now you have a Wizard radiator here with a slim fan, but you managed to make it all work out. Now, did you know that this radiator and this fan combination was going to work, or did you have to test it?
I had to have it built, made for it. This is custom built by Wizard. You just give them the dimensions and they tell you, yeah, we can build it. They send you a picture of what they're going to build before you build it. Great company to work with. Both CVF and Wizard are awesome people. They're really helpful in any kind of questions you want to ask or help with the build.
Wow, this looks fantastic. I mean,
it's nice.
Wow, custom made radiator. That is neat. I actually didn't know this.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So tell us, this is
power steering on this side, which is just, that comes with the CVF system, is the nice, pretty, everything's all nice, polished, pretty. You can get it black or polished. This is an overflow for the radiator, so you got a catch tank for it. It's just kind of fancy for that, but
nice. And I see a K&N air filter.
K&N type style cleanable air filter, because I have plenty of hood clearance.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
So,
that is fantastic. Now, one thing we talked about earlier was the steering rack, and how that was kind of an obstacle that you had to.
Right down through there is where the steering gear is, and it comes alongside this radiator, which was part of the reason it had to be custom built, and goes along between the engine within probably a 1/4 inch of the exhaust manifold on this side as it passes through and goes up into the inside of the car.
I mean,
it's just clearances close.
I'm so impressed, because not only are you building custom, or you're having custom radiators built, you're trying to work a different engine in, you're putting a different chassis in, but then you're running into an issue where you're having to fit the steering rack, the steering system into the car. That is a really close fit.
If I went to a rack and pinion steering, which a lot of people do on these, it would steer from behind, and you get rid of all that, and the steering column can go at a sharper angle and then back and down, and they use that on a lot of these cars and do that steering rack and pinion. This is just a regular steering gear type suspension. It's all stock basically, and I didn't want to go to a rack and pinion because of the Ride Tech suspension that's in it. I wanted it to stay steering gear, so that all stayed the same.
And how does the steering feel to you right now?
I'd like it driving a new car.
Okay.
Yeah, it just drives smooth and easy, turns well, works extremely well. I may put a cooler on it. Sometimes I get a little bit of coolant or power steering fluid on top of the cap, so that means it's getting hot. So I probably will end up putting a cooler on it.
It's some hot days right now, though.
Well, and I'm pushing 275, 60, 15 front tires. Most cars don't do that.
So, I have to ask, what's your next step? What's your plan for the power plant?
AC. I want to get the AC hooked. But at this point, as I'm going down the road at anything above 50 mile an hour, I'm having a little bit of coolant issues, or cooling issues. It climbs to about 210. I don't want that high a temperature if I'm going to be running AC, so I got to figure out how to vent it so that the air can pass through. At this point, it's so tight and everything's compacted in here. I have a feeling that the air is just packing up against this and not flowing through.
Okay.
And so I got a little bit of little things that are still yet to be done.
Some fine tuning.
Yeah.
Now, is your slim fan, is it hooked up to a relay, a temperature switch, or is it just hooked up to a switch itself?
Temperature switch. It comes on all automatic, all by itself. When it hits to 190, the fan comes on. That's what the thermostat's set for. And everything hits at the same time, about 190, the fan comes on. You can sit here and idle all day long and it'll never overheat. It's just fine. It's just at higher speeds, and whether it's the design of the front or, like I said, the air packing up, I haven't figured out yet.
Interesting.
But those are things you find out later. Once it's all together, you can never second guess that. I overkilled the radiator as big as I could go in the little area I had. and they said it should be good up to 400 horse. Well, I sure wouldn't want to have 400 horse in there if I'm getting a 210 with this one. But
well, those are small problems to have when you have a fully custom car.
it is, and it's just little stuff, and that's what you got to expect when you go to build. People think you can build one of these and then everything's done. It's never done. It's a constant, you're always improving, you're always changing and modifying. Once you have modified things that are done from factory, it's like a big snowball, and it just keeps rolling and gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you further you go. So unless you really, really, really want to get into it, don't ever start a project like this, because most people actually give up.
Yeah,
and because it snowballs so bad that this doesn't fit and that doesn't fit and this doesn't fit, and it's just every day you go out and work on a little bit more and you make that fit and you make this fit, and it just you can get through it. It's just aggravating in some cases.
It's all for the love of the car.
It is. It is.
Awesome. So Tim, here's the interior. Now go ahead and tell me a little bit about it.
Well, the seats are out of that 84 Oldsmobile, like I talked about. Power seat on this side. Had to trim them down, take the center armrest out of them between the two in order to get it to fit inside on the front seat. But the rear seat, I just kind of trimmed the metal pieces off and stuffed it back in there and left it the way it is.
They look comfortable.
And they're extremely comfortable. Everybody sits in the back seat and they want it like a couch.
You mind if I try
Go
it out?
right in there, try it out.
Oh wow, you really lean back.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And your cathedral, you actually sit higher than the front seat so you can see over the person driving.
Oh, now that's neat. Now we have lazy boys at home and we love it.
Yeah.
And this feels like our lazy boy.
It feels close.
I see this gauge cluster. That doesn't look from 1939.
No, the GPS speedometer from Speed Hut, and then a cluster of 4 that has the fuel gauge, oil pressure, water temp, and voltage, all 4 gauges in one. And then I put LEDs for the turn signals and brights, and steering columns out of the 84, tilt wheel, turn signals all work, everything all works, because all the electrical is out of that 84, so it was all just part of it.
And this is for the speedometer, correct?
That is
GPS?
GPS speedometer. So
that's cool.
It's dead nuts on, except for when you're going through tunnels.
Well, if I'm sure everyone out there knows, when you go through a tunnel, what do you do?
Go
Step on.
faster anyway.
That's
it.
awesome. Well,
That's
looks comfortable. I mean, that is. I mean, it looks really neat. So, what do you have any future plans for the interior?
I would like to finish the interior. I'm gonna leave, and this will lead into our patina on the outside. But I'd like to leave the patina on the outside, but finish the inside to match the seats with the brown, and redo the door panels and headliner and all that. But that's all takes money and time, so it's gonna take a while.
Well, I mean, how far you've gotten, I think. I mean, I would still be in step 1. Oh, deer! I think look at those deer.
I thought he was going to come over. He was starting to walk this
He's
way.
hanging out. So, Tim, is this where we put the beers, or do we put the bodies?
Well, if you're like my mom, that's where you put her mom back in when they were driving this all the time. Her dad told her that nothing beats a little weight in the trunk on a slick road, and it snowed one night when they were coming home from church, so my mom put my grandma in the trunk so that they could make it home.
they made it home.
And they made it home.
Well, that's hilarious. That's one way. I'll remember that when we're stuck in the road.
There you go. It only works in the rear wheel drive cars. But
That's awesome. So I could see some of the welds. And
yeah, a lot of the fabrication changes that made the wheel wells move in the 3.5 inches to fit the big tires in it, and then of course all that new metal that's in there is all off the 84 old, so I used the hood and pieces off of that for pieces of metal that I needed.
Nothing was wasted.
Nothing was wasted, and I didn't have to buy any metal either. I bought very little metal to fabricate the body anyway, no metal, and then the frame I had to buy metal too. But other than that,
that's awesome. And one of my favorite parts. I mean, this is awesome.
lift up first.
Oh, lift up.
Now go back
Whoa.
down. There you go.
Check out this emblem. Is that cool or what? And that has some weight to it.
It does.
Wow.
It does.
You know, I'm not used to that. You know, nowadays aluminum body parts.
Little light powery,
Oh my
and they put struts on it to help pick the
Wow.
weights up. You know, of course.
That is awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah, I love it.
I bet that had orange and stuff in it originally in between it, I would guess. You know, like those hubcaps
I do love the
do
orange
stuff.
on the hubcaps. So thank you for explaining the journey of your Oldsmobile, Tim. It is really an honor to be able to learn about it, the rich history, and all the hard work you put into it. And at the end, it's about family, it's about the love of cars. And here at Drivers Therapy, we all understand that. So thank you again. I really appreciate it, Tim.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot. This is neat. Oh, I love the clock.
I got the glass and everything for it, but I got to figure out how to make it work. It's
It does feel comfortable.
it's pretty comfortable. It's not bad at all. A little bit of rough riding, you know,
Oh, this
but
is